What happens when cruelty picks the perfect hiding place and nature becomes the weapon? On the south shore of Lake Superior, there's a stretch of rusted industrial coastline the locals avoid. Old ore docks, collapsed catwalks, iron bones sticking out into black water like broken ribs. In summer, it looks abandoned. In late October, when the wind turns sharp and the lake starts breathing its winter rage, it becomes something else. That week, the forecasts kept using words that sounded too pretty for what they meant. Gale, surge, seiche. A once-in-a-decade system sliding in from Canada, colliding with warmer air off the interior, turning Superior into a giant rolling drum. People in town boarded their windows and moved boats into sheltered slips, and Ethan Cole rented a cheap cabin 30 minutes up the shoreline because he wanted quiet. Not the cozy kind, the kind that doesn't ask questions. Ethan had done enough years in uniform to learn how noise can follow you, even when the war is over, how your body can be home, but your mind still keeps a watch schedule, how you can sit at a kitchen table with a mug of coffee and still feel like you're waiting for something to hit. The cabin belonged to a buddy's uncle, half a fishing shack, half a storage shed, with a wood stove that coughed smoke if you fed it wrong. It wasn't much, but it was isolated. That mattered. The road in was narrow, the trees were thick, and the nearest neighbor was a mile away. Ethan didn't bring much: a duffel bag, a battered toolkit, and Rex. Rex was a German shepherd with a broad chest, dark, intelligent eyes, and the kind of stillness that made people instinctively lower their voice. Ethan never trained Rex to be dramatic. He trained him to be reliable. Rex was the one thing in Ethan's life that didn't lie to him. If Rex stared at a door, Ethan trusted that door needed watching. If Rex refused to cross a patch of ground, Ethan listened. And on the first night the wind picked up, Rex stood at the cabin window and stared out into the trees like he could hear something breathing in the dark. Ethan noticed, but he told himself it was only weather, because when you've lived too long with alarms in your bloodstream, you start to doubt your own instincts. You start to call danger nothing just to prove you can. The next morning, the sky was a flat sheet of steel. Lake Superior looked like poured lead. The air tasted metallic, like rain was already falling somewhere far away, and the world was just waiting its turn. Ethan took Rex down to the shoreline trail, mud under boots, cold biting at knuckles. He kept his hands in his jacket pockets, shoulders slightly hunched, like the world might shoot questions at him if he stood too tall. They reached a rocky overlook, and Ethan watched the lake, not the way tourists watched it, the way you watch a living thing that can kill you without effort. A strong gust came off the water and shoved at his chest. Rex's ears flicked, his body tensed. Then Rex did something Ethan hadn't seen in months. He whined, not a needy sound, not fear, a warning. Ethan followed Rex's gaze down the slope, where an old service road cut through brush toward the abandoned ore docks, and he saw a figure moving along the shoreline, small, hunched against the wind, carrying something long and black like a tripod. The figure paused, looked out over the industrial ruins, and kept walking like she owned the storm. Ethan should have turned back. He didn't come here to get involved in anyone's life, but his feet carried him downhill anyway, because he recognized the posture of someone who was too focused to notice the danger gathering around her. When he got closer, he realized she wasn't a kid. She was maybe 19, 20, hair pulled into a rough bun, cheeks red from cold, a camera bag slung across one shoulder. She stood at the edge of a half-collapsed concrete platform, staring at the rusting spine of the ore dock that reached into the lake. "Hey," Ethan called, voice rough from disuse. She turned sharply, eyes wide for half a second, then narrowing as she assessed him, not scared, alert. "I'm not trespassing," she said immediately. "And if you're here to tell me to leave, I've got permits." Ethan blinked once. "Not a cop," he said. "Just someone who doesn't want to watch you get blown into the lake." Her gaze dropped to Rex, then back to Ethan. Something softened in her face. "Sorry," she said. "People have been on me lately." "What are you doing out here?" Ethan asked. She lifted her chin toward the dock. "Documenting runoff," she said, "and structural failures. This site's been inactive for years, but something's still leaking. There's a creek that feeds into the lake right under that far support. You can see the discoloration after heavy rain." She spoke like someone who'd repeated those sentences many times to people who didn't care. Ethan looked at the dock again. A dead industrial beast, rusted steel pylons, a skeletal catwalk, ladders that led down into nothing, a place built to move ore, now waiting to swallow anyone dumb enough to wander onto it. Name? Ethan asked, because his mouth moved before his brain approved it. She hesitated, then answered. Kayla Monroe? Ethan nodded once. Ethan, he said. This is Rex. Kayla's eyes flicked to Rex again, lingering on the dog's calm intensity. He's beautiful, she said quietly. Rex did not wag his tail. He simply watched her like he was deciding whether she belonged in Ethan's world. Kayla's lips tugged into a small smile, like she understood that kind of judgment. You live around here? Ethan asked. No, Kayla said. Just stuck here for now. My mom works nights at the clinic. I'm applying for out-of-state schools, environmental engineering. Out of state, Ethan repeated, like he'd forgotten people had plans. Yeah, she said, if I can survive this town first. The way she said this town had weight. Ethan didn't press. He should have walked away right then, wished her luck, told her to be careful, and returned to his cabin with his quiet. But the wind rose again, and Rex stepped closer to Kayla without being told, positioning himself between her and the edge of the platform. Kayla noticed. Does he always do that? She asked. When he thinks something's wrong, Ethan said. Kayla's eyes drifted past Ethan's shoulder. Something shifted in her expression, tightening, like a door closing. Ethan turned. A glossy black SUV rolled down the service road toward them, tires crunching gravel. Too clean, too expensive. The kind of vehicle that didn't belong near ruins unless its owner believed the world belonged to him. The SUV stopped. 2 doors opened. A young man stepped out first, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a jacket that looked like it cost more than Ethan's monthly rent. He had that polished confidence of someone who'd never been told no without consequences. Behind him climbed 2 others, one girl with heavy makeup and a tight smile, and one thinner guy who hovered like he wanted to be anywhere else. The tall one looked straight at Kayla. Well, he said, look what the storm dragged in. Kayla's jaw tightened. She didn't move. Ethan watched her shoulders, how they squared, how her hands went still. Not fear, preparation. Go home, Grant, she said, like she'd said it before. Grant's smile widened. You're on private property, he said. This whole shoreline is under redevelopment review, which means my family's lawyers will make your permits look like toilet paper. Kayla lifted her chin. Your family doesn't own the lake, she said. Not yet. The thin guy glanced at Ethan and Rex, then back at Grant, uneasy. Grant followed his gaze and finally looked at Ethan like he'd just noticed a piece of furniture that wasn't supposed to be there. And you are? Grant asked. Ethan didn't answer immediately. His eyes stayed on Grant's hands, clean nails, expensive watch. No calluses, no real work. But there was a kind of violence in the way he stood, like he enjoyed the idea of pushing. Just walking my dog, Ethan said. Grant's eyes flicked to Rex. A quick flash of uncertainty, then his pride shoved it away. Cute, Grant said. But you should keep walking, Kayla's voice cut in. Leave him out of it, she said. This is between you and me. Grant's smile turned colder. Oh, it's always between me and you, he said softly. Because you keep making it that way. Kayla's nostrils flared. You mean because I keep filming what you're dumping into the creek, she said. Because I keep showing the town what your father's redevelopment really is. Grant took one slow step forward. Your mom works at the clinic, he said. She can't afford to lose that job. Kayla didn't flinch, but Ethan saw it, the smallest tremor in her fingers. Grant saw it too. His eyes brightened with satisfaction. Imagine, Grant continued, voice almost gentle, how hard it would be for her if her daughter had an accident out here, in a storm, trespassing, acting reckless. The thin guy's eyes widened. Grant, he started. Grant didn't look at him. Kayla's voice dropped low. You wouldn't, she said. Grant shrugged. Storm's coming, he said. People make mistakes. Ethan felt something cold settle behind his ribs. Because he recognized the tone, not anger, decision. Rex's lips pulled back slightly. Not a snarl, just a silent warning. Grant noticed. His eyes narrowed at Rex like the dog had insulted him. And then Grant did the stupidest thing a certain kind of person always does when he feels challenged. He moved toward the dog. Kayla stepped forward instantly. "Don't!" she snapped. Grant ignored her, reaching out like he planned to shove Rex away with one casual motion. Rex didn't lunge. He simply rose, fluid, controlled, and placed himself closer to Ethan, muscles tight, eyes locked on Grant's knee. Ethan's voice turned flat. "Back up," he said. Grant's gaze shot to Ethan. "You threatening me?" Grant asked, amused. Ethan didn't blink. "I'm warning you," he said. For a heartbeat, the wind seemed to pause, as if the storm itself leaned in to listen. Then Grant laughed, a short, ugly sound. "You're not from here," Grant said, "so you don't know how this works." He pointed at Kayla. "She's been a problem," he said, "always stirring people up, always making my dad look bad." He took another step, now close enough that Ethan could smell his cologne, sharp, expensive, wrong for this place. "You know what happens to problems?" Grant asked. Kayla's voice cut like glass. "They get exposed," she said. Grant's face twisted, and that was the moment the storm chose to arrive. Not with rain, with a sound, a deep, low roar rolling across the lake like something massive turning over in its sleep. The wind punched hard enough that Kayla staggered back. Ethan grabbed her elbow automatically to steady her. Grant noticed that touch. His eyes flashed. And in that flash, Ethan saw the truth. Grant didn't just want Kayla gone because of a camera. He wanted her gone because she refused to be small for him. Grant's hand shot out, not toward Ethan, toward Kayla's camera bag. He yanked it, hard, ripping the strap off her shoulder. The bag slammed to the concrete and skidded. Kayla lunged for it, and Grant shoved her. She stumbled, boots scraping on wet concrete. Rex exploded into motion. He didn't attack Grant's throat. He went for the arm that had shoved Kayla, a clean, controlled strike, teeth snapping close enough to make the message clear. Grant recoiled with a shout, and that was all it took. The girl, Grant's companion, screamed like Rex had murdered someone. The thin guy froze, panic rising. Grant's face flushed red with rage and humiliation. "You stupid animal!" He swung his foot, hard. Rex twisted, but the boot still connected with Rex's ribs, an awful, dull thud that made Ethan's stomach drop. Rex yelped once, sharp and betrayed, then landed, legs splaying for half a second before he caught himself. Kayla's scream tore out of her. "No!" Ethan moved forward in the same instant, fast, precise. His hand grabbed Grant's jacket and shoved him back 2 steps with enough force to slam him against a rusted railing. Ethan didn't punch him. He didn't need to. His eyes were enough. Grant stared up at him, shocked, because for the first time in his life, he'd touched something that didn't care about his last name. Ethan's voice was low. "Get in your car," he said, "and leave." Grant's chest heaved. The storm wind whipped his hair, made him look younger and smaller for a second. Then his eyes slid past Ethan, to Kayla, kneeling beside Rex, hands shaking as she checked his side. Grant's face hardened again. "This isn't over," he said. Ethan's gaze didn't move. "It is for today," he replied. Grant spit on the ground, then turned sharply and marched back to the SUV. The girl scrambled after him. The thin guy hesitated, eyes darting between Kayla and Ethan, then followed, shoulders slumped. The SUV roared away, tires throwing gravel like angry hail. Kayla stayed crouched beside Rex, fingers gentle on his fur. Rex's breathing was rough, but he was upright. Ethan crouched too. "He'll be sore," Ethan said. "Maybe bruised, but he's tough." Kayla swallowed, eyes glossy with fury. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't think—" Ethan shook his head once. "This isn't your fault," he said. Kayla's jaw clenched. "It is," she said softly. "Because I keep thinking if I just keep filming, if I just keep showing people, the truth will protect me." She looked up at Ethan. "But it doesn't," she said. "It just makes them meaner." Ethan didn't answer right away, because he understood that too well. Truth doesn't stop violence. It just gives violence a reason to hurry. The first rain hit 5 minutes later, hard, cold drops that stung like pebbles. Ethan helped Kayla gather her scattered gear. Her camera body was cracked at the edge. Her hands shook as she tested the lens. "It still turns on," she said, voice strained. "But—" "Get out of here," Ethan said. "Storm's not playing." Kayla hesitated, then nodded. She stood, adjusting her jacket, and looked at Ethan like she was memorizing him. "Thank you," she said, "for stepping in." Ethan's mouth tightened. "Be careful," he said. Kayla gave Rex one last look, then started up the path toward the road. Ethan watched her go until the rain blurred her into the gray. Then Rex pressed close to Ethan's leg, breathing heavy. Ethan rested a hand on Rex's neck. "Home," he murmured. Rex followed, but as they walked back through the trees, Rex kept glancing over his shoulder, ears angled back, like he could still feel Grant's eyes in the wind. That night, the storm became a living thing. Trees groaned, rain hammered the cabin roof like fists. The lake's roar was distant but constant, a low, endless threat. Ethan sat at the table with Rex lying nearby, and he told himself it was done. Grant had been scared off. Kayla would be home. Life would continue. But around midnight, Rex lifted his head sharply. Ethan froze. "Rex," he whispered. Rex stood, slow, silent, and went to the door. Not barking, not whining, just standing there, staring at the wood as if he could see through it. Ethan's skin prickled. He moved quietly, hand drifting toward the drawer where he kept his flashlight and the old fixed-blade knife he used for cutting rope and wood. Then the sound came. Not a knock, a frantic pounding, followed by a voice, thin and broken by rain. "Please, please, open up!" Ethan yanked the door open. The storm lunged inside, and a boy stumbled over the threshold like he'd been thrown from a moving car. He was soaked to the bone, face bruised, one eye swelling. His hands shook so hard his fingers looked numb. He looked up at Ethan with a kind of terror that doesn't belong to ordinary trouble. "She's out there," he gasped. Grant, Ethan's voice turned instantly calm, in the way it only does when something inside you flips from human to mission. "Who?" Ethan demanded. The boy swallowed hard, rainwater dripping off his chin. "Kayla," he choked out. He took her to the dock." Ethan's chest tightened. "What did he do?" Ethan asked, each word clipped. The boy's eyes darted to Rex, then back to Ethan like he was afraid even speaking it would make it real. "He chained her," he whispered, "to the lower ladder, on the far support. He said the lake's gonna rise. He said nobody will hear her over the storm." Ethan stared at him, because he knew what the boy meant before he finished the next sentence. "There's a seiche," the boy sobbed. "My dad works search and rescue. He told me when the wind hits right, the water sloshes. It can jump, like a bathtub. The dock floods." The boy grabbed Ethan's sleeve with desperate hands. "Please," he begged. "I didn't help. I swear I didn't. I ran. I came here because I saw you earlier. You stopped him. You're the only one." Ethan's brain was already moving faster than fear. Lower ladder, far support, rising water, storm surge, Saicha, a timed death, a perfect accident. Ethan looked down at Rex. Rex's ears were forward now, body trembling, not with fear, with readiness. Ethan inhaled once, then he moved. He didn't ask more questions. He didn't waste time on anger. He grabbed his waterproof jacket, his strongest rope, his headlamp, his trauma kit, because sometimes survival is decided by what you can stop bleeding, not what you can fight. He shoved boots onto his feet, and he grabbed the boy by the shoulder. "Name," Ethan said. The boy flinched. "Mason," he stammered. Ethan nodded once. "Mason," he said, voice iron. "You're coming. You're going to show me exactly where, and you're going to keep moving no matter what you feel." Mason swallowed, eyes shining. Okay, he whispered. Ethan stepped into the storm. Rex followed, limping slightly but refusing to be left behind. The night swallowed them. The road to the docks was half flooded in places, rain turning gravel into slurry. Wind shoved at the truck when Ethan found his keys and got it started, headlights carving 2 weak tunnels through the chaos. Mason sat rigid in the passenger seat, shaking, pointing when the road forked. "Left, no, right there," he choked. Ethan drove like the storm was just another obstacle course, not fast, precise, because speed in bad weather is how you die. Rex stood braced behind the seats, claws digging into the floor mat to stay upright as the truck bounced. When they reached the service road, a fallen tree blocked part of it. Ethan swore under his breath, parked, and grabbed the rope. "We go on foot," he said. Mason's face crumpled. It's far," he whispered. Ethan stared at him. "It's not far," Ethan said. "It's just hard." He stepped out into rain so cold it felt like punishment. Rex leapt down beside him and immediately lowered his head, scenting the ground, pulling forward. The world was a blur of water and wind and the distant roar of the lake. They pushed through brush, boots sinking in mud, branches whipping faces. Mason slipped twice. Ethan hauled him up without a word. They reached the concrete platform Ethan had stood on earlier. Now it looked like a different place. The dock's skeletal frame rose out of the lake like a giant trap. Waves slammed the supports. Water surged and retreated with unnatural rhythm, like the whole lake was breathing in and out too fast. Ethan's headlamp beams swept across rusted rails. Anne caught movement. A flash of pale skin. A figure clinging to a metal rung below the main platform, arms stretched, wrists bound. Kayla. Her hair was plastered to her face. She was soaked, shivering violently, chest heaving as waves punched her legs. She wasn't on the main deck. She was lower, where the ladder met the waterline, exactly where the siege would hit first. Ethan's stomach turned cold. "Kayla!" Mason screamed. Kayla's head jerked up. Even from this distance, Ethan saw the terror in her eyes change into something sharper. Hope. Then the wind ripped her scream away before it became a sound. Ethan scanned. Quickly, he needed an anchor point above. The dock's main supports were corroded. The railings looked weak. One wrong tie-off and the whole system would rip loose. He swept his light across the concrete platform and spotted a thick steel mooring ring embedded in the slab. Old, rusted, but anchored deep. He yanked on it. It held. Ethan nodded once. "Mason," he shouted over the storm. "You hold this rope. Wrap it around your waist and brace behind that concrete block. If you let go, I die. Do you understand?" Mason's eyes went wide. He started. Ethan stepped close enough that Mason could see his face clearly. "You came here because you wanted to be better than him," Ethan said. "Now prove it." Mason's throat bobbed. He nodded hard. "Yes," he said. "Yes, I understand." Ethan clipped the rope, checked the knot twice, then cinched the harness around his own waist. Rex whined sharply, stepping forward as if to follow. Ethan crouched, grabbing Rex's face gently. "Stay," he ordered. "Guard." Rex's eyes held his, dark, furious, loyal. Then Rex sat, trembling, watching Ethan like he was trying to burn the image into memory. Ethan swung over the edge. The first contact with the dock ladder was a shock, metal slick with algae and rain, vibrating with each slam of the waves. He descended fast but controlled, boots finding rungs, one hand on the rope, the other on the ladder. Below, Kayla fought to keep her head above water when waves surged. Her wrists were chained, actual chain, wrapped around the ladder rung, padlocked. Grant didn't just want her gone, he wanted it to be impossible for her to free herself. Ethan dropped to a rung level with her shoulders. "Kayla!" he shouted. She coughed, blinking hard through rain. "Ethan!" she rasped, voice thin, almost swallowed by the lake. Ethan didn't waste words. "I'm here," he said. "Look at me." Kayla's eyes locked onto his, like a drowning person grabbing a rope. Ethan pulled a bolt cutter from his pack, compact, heavy, the kind he used for stubborn locks when people got trapped in bad places. He wedged himself, bracing against the ladder as waves tried to wrench him off. "Hold your breath when I say," Ethan ordered. "Waves are going to hit." Kayla nodded, teeth chattering so hard Ethan heard it. A massive swell rolled in. "Now!" Ethan barked. Kayla sucked in air. The wave hit. The world turned white and violent. Water slammed into Ethan's chest, trying to peel him off the ladder, ripping breath from his lungs. He wrapped one arm around the rung, forcing his body to become a shield between Kayla and the full force. For 2 brutal seconds, he was underwater, cold so sharp it felt like knives. Then they surfaced, coughing. Kayla's face was blue around the lips. She was running out of time. Ethan shoved the bolt cutter's jaws onto the padlock. The metal was slick, his hands numb, but he squeezed with everything he had. The lock snapped. Kayla's wrists stayed bound by chain, but the chain came free from the rung. Ethan grabbed her under the arms. "Up!" he commanded. Kayla tried to climb, but her legs were weak, cramps seizing from cold. Ethan hauled her, one rung, another. Above, Mason braced, rope burning against his gloves, face twisted with effort. And then the lake did what Mason had warned. The seesh came. It wasn't a wave, it was the whole body of water deciding to rise. In one sudden, sickening surge, the water level jumped, flooding the lower structure, swallowing rungs that had been above the surface seconds earlier. Ethan felt it slam against his waist, then his chest, as if the lake had grabbed him and yanked. Kayla screamed as the water surged up her body like something alive. Ethan locked his arms around the ladder, holding her between his body and the metal. "Climb!" he roared. Kayla fought, sobbing, claws of cold in her muscles. Ethan shoved her upward, rung by rung, his shoulders burning. Then he heard it, a deep metallic groan. The dock's old catwalk above them flexed under the new water pressure. Rust screamed. Something was giving way. Ethan looked up and saw a section of corroded grating beginning to tear loose, shuddering, ripping like paper. If it fell, it would slice the rope. It would crush them. "Move!" Ethan screamed upward. Kayla's eyes went wide. She scrambled harder. Ethan pushed with everything left. Above, Mason yanked like his life depended on it, because Ethan had made it true. Ethan got Kayla to the lip of the platform. Hands reached down, Mason's trembling grip, and grabbed her jacket, hauling her up onto concrete. Kayla collapsed, coughing water, shaking violently. Ethan tried to climb after, and the catwalk broke. The metal grating sheared loose with a scream and dropped like a guillotine. Ethan jerked his head back just in time, but the falling metal slammed into the ladder beside him, twisting it, sending shock through his arms. The rope snapped taut as the dock shifted. Above, Mason screamed. Ethan looked down. The water surged again. And then, through rain and chaos, Ethan saw Rex. Rex was on the platform, body low, teeth bared at something Ethan couldn't see from below. A shadow moved near the edge, a figure in a hood, watching. Grant. Of course. He hadn't left. He'd come back to make sure the lake finished the job. Rex lunged. Grant swung something. Maybe a pipe, maybe a chunk of metal. Rex yelped, stumbling. Ethan's blood went ice cold. "Rex!" he roared. Kayla's head snapped up, eyes wild. Mason turned, and Grant moved. Fast. He grabbed the rope, Ethan's lifeline, and yanked hard, trying to pull it loose from the mooring ring, not to save himself, to drop Ethan into the lake. Mason screamed and lunged toward him. Kayla tried to rise, but her body wouldn't obey. Grant's face was twisted, wet hair plastered to his forehead, eyes bright with something ugly and certain. "You're not supposed to be here," he screamed at Ethan through the storm. "This isn't your town." Ethan hung below, one arm hooked around the ladder, the other reaching, not for himself, for Rex. Because Rex was dazed, trying to get up, trying to protect Kayla, even while hurt. Ethan's voice turned lethal. "Mason!" he shouted. "Knife, my pack, cut his hands off that rope." Mason hesitated only a fraction, then grabbed Ethan's pack, ripped it open, found the knife. Grant's eyes widened as Mason stepped forward with shaking determination. "Don't," Grant hissed. "You owe me—" Mason's voice cracked, but it held. "I don't owe you a life," he said. He slashed, not at Grant. At the rope in Grant's grip, the small loop Grant had wrapped around his hand to yank harder. The blade cut it clean, snapping Grant's leverage. Grant stumbled back, balance lost on slick concrete. He flailed, and Rex, half-dazed but still Rex, surged forward and slammed into Grant's legs like a living battering ram. Grant went down hard. His shoulder hit the concrete with a crack that even the storm couldn't hide. He screamed. Mason jumped on him, pinning him, fists shaking. Kayla crawled toward Rex, sobbing his name, and Ethan climbed. One rung, two, every muscle screaming, water dragging at his boots, ladder twisting dangerously. But he climbed, because the only thing worse than dying in cold water is leaving your dog behind. When Ethan hauled himself onto the platform, his hands immediately went to Rex, checking ribs, checking eyes, checking for blood. Rex's breathing was ragged. He'd taken another hit. But he was alive. Kayla wrapped both arms around Rex's neck, shaking so hard her teeth clicked. "I thought," she choked, "I thought he—" Ethan's gaze lifted to Grant, who lay pinned under Mason, face contorted. Grant's eyes met Ethan's, and for a second, the storm sound faded, replaced by a different silence. The silence of someone realizing his name won't save him anymore. But Grant's lips curled. "You think," he spat, "anyone's gonna believe you?" Ethan didn't answer. He reached into Kayla's torn camera bag and pulled out the cracked camera body. He turned it on. The screen flickered, still working. Kayla stared, confused. Ethan looked at her. "You ever back up your footage?" he asked. Kayla blinked, then nodded faintly. "To the cloud," she whispered. "Auto-upload when it connects." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "And what did you film today?" he asked. Kayla's breath hitched. Her gaze slid to Grant, then back to Ethan. She understood. She reached with shaking hands, tapped the camera, scrolled through the last clips. The screen showed Grant's face, earlier on the platform, smirking while he grabbed her bag. Then later, brief, blurred, Grant's voice caught by the camera's audio as he dragged her toward the ladder, saying something that made Kayla's skin crawl. "Let the lake do it. No marks, no witnesses." Mason's face went gray. Grant's eyes widened. Kayla's throat tightened. Ethan's voice was calm. "That's your confession," he said. Grant's expression shifted, panic flickering for the first time. "No," he started. Ethan looked at Mason. "Call 911, he ordered. "And don't say accident. Say attempted murder. Say storm rescue in progress. Give coordinates." Mason fumbled his phone, hands shaking, but he obeyed. Grant began to laugh, thin, hysterical. "My dad," he gasped. "My dad owns the sheriff." Ethan's eyes didn't move. "Then your dad can explain the cloud backup," Ethan said. Grant's laugh died, because for the first time, he realized the storm didn't erase everything. Sometimes it reveals what was already rotten. The rescue didn't end at the platform. It rarely does. The cold had gotten into Kayla deep. Hypothermia wasn't dramatic. No movie screaming, no neat collapse. It was subtle. It was the body quietly deciding to quit. By the time they reached Ethan's truck, Kayla's shivering had slowed, which was worse. Her skin felt waxy under Ethan's fingers as he checked her pulse. Ethan shoved her into the passenger seat, cranked the heater, wrapped her in every blanket he had. Rex climbed in last, trembling, refusing to be separated from her. Mason sat in back, still on the phone, voice breaking as he gave dispatch the details. The sirens came slower than Ethan wanted, because storms make everything harder, but they came. An ambulance, a state trooper, and, yes, eventually, the local sheriff's cruiser, sliding in like it owned the road. The sheriff stepped out, heavy-set, rain-slicking his hat, expression already annoyed like the storm was wasting his time. Then the black SUV appeared again behind him. Not Grant's, a bigger one. With tinted windows, power. A man got out. Older, thick neck, expensive coat, eyes sharp and furious. Grant's father. He walked straight toward Ethan like the world bent for him. "What is this?" he demanded, voice loud over rain. "I'm told my son was attacked, by a stranger, with a dog." The sheriff nodded along like a puppet. Ethan stepped forward, rain soaking him, face unreadable. Kayla sat inside the truck, barely conscious, Rex's head pressed against her chest. Mason stood near the tailgate, shaking but upright. Grant's father pointed at Mason. "That boy is lying," he snapped. "He's always been weak, always jealous." Grant, now cuffed, leaned against the cruiser, face pale, eyes darting. The sheriff cleared his throat. "Sir," he said to Ethan, "I'm going to need you to step aside. We're taking statements." Ethan looked at the sheriff's badge, then at the man behind him, and he felt something in himself settle. Heavy, quiet, absolute. Not rage. Resolve. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He didn't show it yet. He simply spoke. "My name is Ethan Cole," he said. "U.S. Navy veteran, and you're going to listen very carefully." Grant's father scoffed. "Veteran?" he spat. "So what?" Ethan's eyes stayed on his. "So," Ethan said evenly, "you can try to bully your way through small-town conversations, but you can't bully your way through federal servers." Grant's father's brow furrowed. Ethan turned his phone so the sheriff could see. On the screen, the uploaded video file, time-stamped, backed up, audio clear enough to make a jury flinch. Ethan's voice lowered. "This is your son admitting intent," he said. "This is him saying he wanted the lake to do it. This is him trying to pull my rope loose while I was hanging over water. And if you try to bury this, if you try to intimidate witnesses or interfere, then you're not playing with teenagers anymore." The sheriff's face shifted, subtle, but Ethan caught it. Fear. Grant's father's jaw tightened. "Who do you think you are?" he hissed. Ethan leaned closer, rain dripping off his lashes. "I'm the guy who doesn't leave people chained to drown," he said. "And I'm the guy who already sent that file to 3 places you don't control." He looked at Mason. "Mason's dad works search and rescue," Ethan said. "Dispatch logs will show response. EMS will document rope marks, hypothermia, injuries. Rex's vet report will show blunt trauma." He looked at the sheriff. "And if you want to gamble your badge on this family's money," Ethan continued, "you can. But you'll be gambling it against evidence that doesn't disappear." Silence. The storm filled it. The sheriff swallowed. He turned slowly to Grant's father. "Sir," he said, voice suddenly careful, "I need you to step back." Grant's father stared like he'd never heard that phrase before. Grant's eyes widened in panic. "Dad!" he began. But the ambulance doors slammed, and the paramedic's voice cut through everything. "We're taking her now." Kayla's stretcher rolled past, her face pale, eyes half open. Rex whining softly as he tried to follow until Ethan held him gently. "It's okay," Ethan murmured to Rex. "She's not alone." Kayla's fingers weakly reached through the blanket and brushed Rex's fur. Rex went still, like that tiny touch was a command to keep breathing. Weeks later, the ore dock was taped off, not for redevelopment, but for investigation. The town couldn't pretend anymore, not after the videos, not after the EMS reports, not after the storm had dragged the truth right into daylight. Grant's father tried to control the story. He failed. Because this time, the evidence wasn't a rumor, it was a file. Grant faced charges, the sheriff faced questions, and people in town started saying Kayla's name with something new in their voices: respect. One cold afternoon, when the lake finally calmed, Ethan walked the shoreline trail again with Rex at his side, Rex moving slower, ribs still healing, but eyes as sharp as ever. At the overlook, Ethan found Kayla sitting on a rock, bundled in a thick jacket, camera in hand, new camera this time, but the same stubborn focus. She looked up as Ethan approached. Rex padded forward and pressed his head into her knee. Kayla's eyes shone as she scratched behind his ear. "Hey, hero," she murmured to Rex. Ethan stopped beside them, hands in pockets, staring out at Lake Superior. Kayla spoke quietly, like she didn't want to spook the peace. "I got accepted," she said. Ethan looked down. "Out of state?" he asked. Kayla nodded. "Yeah," she whispered. "Full scholarship. Turns out, telling the truth on camera matters when people finally watch." Ethan's mouth tightened into something almost like a smile. "Good," he said. Kayla's gaze drifted to his face. "I don't know how to thank you," she said softly. "You didn't have to come back out there." Ethan looked at the lake. Wind moved across it, gentle now, like the storm was just a memory. He exhaled once. "I did," he said. Kayla frowned slightly. "Why?" she asked. Ethan's hand dropped, resting on Rex's head. Rex leaned into it, solid and warm. Ethan's voice was quiet. "Because some people think the world is theirs," he said, "and they think nature can hide what they do." He glanced at Kayla. "But storms don't just destroy," he said. "Sometimes they expose." Kayla swallowed. "And Rex?" she asked, voice small. He took another hit for me?" Ethan looked down at Rex, who stared back like he already knew his answer. "He didn't do it for you," Ethan said softly. "Not only." Kayla blinked. Ethan's gaze turned distant for a moment, like he was looking through time. "He did it because he knows what it is to stand between someone and something that wants them gone," Ethan murmured. "That's what he is." Kayla's lips trembled. "And what are you?" she asked. Ethan stared at the lake again. Then he answered, voice steady. "Someone trying to be an anchor," he said, "before the water takes what it shouldn't." Rex's tail thumped once against the rock, not loud, just enough, like a promise.